Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Tuesday, February 25th, 2025. House votes on a budget resolution that will advance the budget reconciliation process that Republicans want to use to enact President Donald Trump's agenda on border security, energy, tax cuts, and spending cuts. White House has asked about how federal employees should respond to the latest post from Elon Musk extending the deadline for them to email 5 accomplishments in the past week or face possibly losing their jobs. Government Accountability Office, GAO, releases its annual high-risk list, government programs at risk of waste, fraud, and abuse. White House announces that the Trump administration and not the independent White House Correspondents Association will determine which news outlets will be part of the press pool allowed to cover the president in the Oval Office, on Air Force One, and similar closed events. President Donald Trump previews a program to give preferred immigration status to people who invest $5 million or more into the United States. He's calling it the Gold Card. And Vivek Ramaswamy, former presidential candidate and former co-chair of the Trump administration's Department of Government Efficiency, announces he'll be seeking the Republican nomination for governor of Ohio. Story from NBC News. Speaker Mike Johnson said Tuesday he is plowing forward this week with a vote on House Republicans' multi-trillion-dollar budget blueprint, crucial test for President Donald Trump's legislative agenda. But a band of unruly conservatives is threatening to tank the vote. Wary moderate Republicans appear to be moving toward supporting the budget resolution after receiving some assurances from Johnson about Medicaid in a future package. Still, at least 4 GOP rabble-rousers, Victoria Spartz of Indiana, Tim Burchett of Tennessee, Warren Davidson of Ohio, and Thomas Massie of Kentucky, emerged from a closed-door meeting of House Republicans on Tuesday morning and said they would vote against the budget plan over concerns it doesn't cut spending enough. Those 4 votes could be enough to kill the measure. The GOP's 228 to 215 House majority means Johnson can afford only a single GOP defection unless lawmaker absences change the math. That was from NBC News. Here's some of the debate on the House floor before the vote. Congressman Jody Arrington, Republican of Texas, is the Budget Committee chair.
Today, we're going to unlock the policies to make America safe and prosperous again. This fiscal framework will guide the process for restoring the fiscal health of our nation by reining in reckless spending and reigniting economic growth. In addition, and importantly, it provides critical resources to our commander-in-chief to secure our borders, strengthen our military, and provide for the common defense. But for the next 2 hours, Mr. Chairman, my Democrat colleagues are going to reach way back to the only plays they know how to run, making false claims and fear-mongering. Why? Because they are still, even after the recent election, disconnected from the people's reality. Because they're more concerned with protecting unionized government bureaucrats and woke and wasteful government programs than they are about protecting taxpayers and their sacred treasure. Why? Because their commitment isn't to we the people in this fateful moment. It's to we the government and to derailing the mandate from the people for common sense policies and President Trump's America First agenda. I'm going to take some time to set the record straight, Mr. Chairman, so that every time the American people hear these false claims, to mislead them into thinking that the tax cuts somehow benefited the billionaires and corporations and that Republicans are cutting benefits for seniors and the poorest among us. I want the American people to know the truth. And here's the truth. The Trump tax cuts lowered tax rates for every American household at every income level while increasing the amount of taxes paid by the top 1%. According to the Washington Post, which, by the way, gave Democrats not 1, not 2, not 3, 4 Pinocchios every time they made these misleading claims. They said 3 of every $4 in the Trump tax cuts didn't go to corporations, but they went to individuals, cutting taxes for the lowest income individuals by 10%, while cutting taxes for the top 1% of the income earners by less than 0.5%. In addition, we saw a record 25-year wage increase for median household incomes. Real wages at the bottom 10% rose 2 times faster than the top 10%. Real wealth at the bottom half of households rose 3 times faster than that of the top half of our country. A record 6 million people were lifted out of poverty. Black, Hispanic, and Asian American citizens experienced historic high incomes and all-time low unemployment. Here's the reality, Mr. Chairman. Our Democrat colleagues oppose the American people's tax cuts.
Congressman Jody Arrington, Republican from Texas, Budget Committee Chair on the House floor during debate on the budget resolution. He also said Democrats are not being honest about the spending cuts the Republicans are looking at.
To pay for these tax cuts, the Democrats are going to say that Republicans are cutting benefits for seniors and for, again, our poorest and most vulnerable among us. Here's the truth, Mr. Chairman. Republicans are fighting to right-size a woke, weaponized, and bloated bureaucracy, to root out the trillions of dollars in waste, fraud, and abuse, and to rein in the reckless spending of the Biden administration and our Democrat colleagues from over the last 4 years. Prior to 2019, before President Biden took office, and he and the Democrats jammed $2 trillion through in the so-called COVID relief, even though maybe 20% of that money actually went for the purposes of COVID relief. Our budget back then was $4.5 trillion. Today, it's $7 trillion. With the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, they gave away $700 billion in tax credits to green energy corporations. They expanded Obamacare subsidies to people making more than $500,000 and already had, many of whom already had employer-sponsored health care. And they expanded the IRS, $80 billion, 80,000 IRS agents, shaking down mostly middle-class people and small businesses. With the stroke of a pen, President Biden wasted $2 trillion unilaterally of taxpayer monies by opening up our welfare services, taxpayer-funded welfare services to people in this country illegally. He waived work requirements for means-tested welfare programs from SNAP to Medicaid and beyond, trapping people in poverty and dependence on the federal government. He mandated expensive and unreliable electric vehicles for all Americans and a whole lot more.
The House Budget Committee Chair, Jody Arrington, Republican from Texas, on the House floor during debate on the budget resolution. Congressional Quarterly with a summary. The measure includes reconciliation instructions to 11 House committees in order to activate the budget reconciliation process, through which a separate bill to enact much of President Trump's policy agenda can be passed by the Senate by simple majority vote. Congressman Thomas Massie, Republican from Kentucky, spoke to reporters this morning about why he opposes it.
Are you still a no? Is there anything?
They convinced me in there. I'm a no.
Is there anything?
Look what, let me, their own numbers. If the Republican plan passes under the rosiest assumptions, which aren't even true, we're going to add $328 billion to the deficit this year. We're going to add $295 billion to the deficit the year after that, and $242 billion to the deficit after that, under the rosiest assumptions. Why would I vote for that?
So are you solidly a no?
Yeah, they convinced me. I was a lean no until this meeting. Now I'm a no.
This no confirmed.
This is a no.
Why? Why?
They're talking points. Look. These are not something I made up. This is the leadership's talking points. It adds $328 billion to the deficit. It adds $295 billion to the deficit the year after that. The only way they get to this magic thing where it's not going to kill our country is 5 years from now, they imagine that 2.5% growth accumulates, and that even right here they say they're going to cap discretionary spending. You think we're going to cap discretionary spending and then spend at the rate of inflation after that? That has never happened. So their assumptions are wrong, but even if you take their assumptions at face value, they told us in there they're going to increase the deficit in 2025 by $328 billion. And I've been here long enough. I've been here 12 years, so I've seen a 10-year plan or two come all the way to 10 years. Under Boehner, we had these 10-year plans. Under Ryan, we had these 10-year plans. Anything past the third year never happens.
Congressman Thomas Massey, Republican from Kentucky, speaking to reporters on Capitol Hill outside the regular Tuesday House Republican Conference meeting. TheHill.com has a story about how the budget resolution is intersecting with the possible government shutdown March 14th, when regular government funding needs to be dealt with. The Hill writes that Congressman Warren Davidson, Republican of Ohio, one of several Republicans who have come out against the House GOP's budget resolution, told reporters on Tuesday that leadership could communicate a binding plan for discretionary spending ahead of March 14th if they want to secure his support for the budget bill. As for the Democrats from Politico, House Democrats are preparing to present a united front against Tuesday evening's scheduled vote on the GOP budget blueprint. At a morning caucus meeting, Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries showed lawmakers a video montage of protests at Republican town halls last week over cuts to government, according to several people familiar with the situation. Jeffries also urged Democrats to show up for a planned noon demonstration against the GOP budget on the Capitol steps. And they did, at which point Congressman Jeffries called the House Republican budget reckless, an assault on democracy, and said no House Democrat would be supporting it.
The Republican budget represents the largest Medicaid cut in American history. Children will be devastated. Families will be devastated. People with disabilities will be devastated. Seniors will be devastated. Hospitals will be devastated. Nursing homes will be devastated. So let me be clear. House Democrats will not provide a single vote to this reckless Republican budget. Not one. Not one. Not one. They will not get a single Democratic vote. Why? Because we're voting with the American people. We're voting with the American people. We will push back against the Republican budget today. We will push back against the Republican budget tomorrow. We will push back against the reckless Republican budget until it's buried deep in the ground, never to rise again. Never to rise again. We stand with the American people until victory is won. The reckless Republican budget will hurt everyday Americans who rely on Medicaid, rely on nutritional assistance, and rely on veterans' benefits. This is not a reality show. This is not a joke. This is not politics as usual. It's a matter of life and death. And so we will stand with the American people. Stand with them today, stand with them tomorrow, stand with them next week, stand with them next month, stand with them this year, stand with them next year, stand with the American people until victory is won, this budget is defeated, and America is restored.
Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat from New York, the minority leader, on the steps of the U.S. Capitol building, surrounded by other House Democrats. New York Times article this week has the headline, Republicans face angry voters at town halls, hinting at broader backlash. The subheading, after a month-long honeymoon for the GOP at the start of President Trump's term, lawmakers are confronting a groundswell of fear and disaffection in districts around the country. That was from the New York Times. Congresswoman Lisa McClain of Michigan, the House Republican Conference chair, had a different interpretation at today's House Republican Leadership News Conference.
Last week, videos of protesters yelling at members of Congress went viral, right? But the content focused on the confrontation, not the why. Some of the people that hijacked those town halls are happy with the bloated status quo. They want the bloated status quo to continue. They don't want to get our country back on track. And to make matters worse, even the DNC chair openly suggested that the outrage at the town halls across the country was orchestrated. But here's the truth. getting us out of nearly $37 trillion in debt. It's not going to be easy. President Trump and the White House Republicans have started the conversation on wasteful government spending. And 77 million voices outweighed those voices at the town halls. We got our marching orders. We listened to the American people, and they told us they wanted change. And buckle up, because that's exactly what we're giving them. And our friends on the other side of the aisle, please keep going down the path of defending and even advocating for government waste, fraud, and abuse. The message they all are sending is clear, and we see whose side they're on. Look no further than their newest messaging strategy. The minority leader unveiled it last week. It's called Share Your Story. Can you guess whose story they're sharing? It's government employees, like a locksmith from Yosemite National Park. Not the stories of lives lost due to illegal immigration. They're not asking to share those stories. Not the stories of innocent lives that were lost due to fentanyl that came from across the border. Not the stories of hardworking Americans struggling to make ends meet. Democrats are sharing the stories of government employees. And this sad attempt of fear-mongering that makes Democrats look even more deranged. It is absolutely insane that they think making government work more efficiently is a bad thing.
Congresswoman Elisa McClain, Republican from Michigan, the House Republican Conference chair, at a news conference with other House Republican leaders. Congressman Greg Casar, Democrat of Texas, Congressional Progressive Caucus chair, also mentioned member of Congress town hall meetings at a news conference on the grounds of the U.S. Capitol today in opposition to the House Republican budget resolution on the floor today.
Today, Republicans here in the House will try to pass this billionaire budget resolution. There's some, yeah, it's terrible. They're going to try, now they're going to try to talk about their complicated math or legalese, but what's going on for the everyday person is really simple. And so I want the folks watching at home to know that what House Republicans are trying to pass today is to steal from seniors, steal from children, steal from veterans, all to pay for tax cuts for the ultra-rich. That's what it is. They want to end Medicaid as we know it just to pay for tax breaks for guys like Elon Musk. The bottom line is their plan is billionaires get richer, everybody else gets screwed. Now, they think they've got a lot going for them. They've got the money, they've got the big corporations, they have the White House and the Republicans in Congress, but I don't really like their odds because House Republicans and billionaires are picking a fight with working Americans. And in a democracy, the people win. 8 years ago, when extreme Republicans had the White House and both the House and the Senate, they had the money, they had their plan to take health care away from millions of Americans and end the Affordable Care Act, but the American people won and those House Republicans lost. And we're right back in the same situation because today something is happening in America. Americans are rising up to say we want a government by and for the people, not by and for the billionaires. You see it in protests and marches and at Republican town halls all across the country. I can promise you, even though when the press go and ask some of these Republicans whether they're worried about what they're seeing at their town halls, whether they're worried about those protests, they have to lie through their teeth when they say they're not worried because we hear them in the hallway worried. They're worried because they know that they have a choice. They can either be representatives of their districts or they can act like Trump Musk employees. They have that choice. And they know that if they keep acting as Trump Musk employees, that the people in their district are going to demand a representative. And that puts them in a tight spot.
Congressman Greg Casar, a Democrat from Texas, Congressional Progressive Caucus chair at a news conference outside the U.S. Capitol building in Washington. This is Washington Today. From the Daily Signal, improper payments, empty federal buildings, and fragmented disaster response are among the key drivers of waste and inefficiency in the federal government, according to the Government Accountability Office. The GAO's 2025 high-risk list, heightened attention could save billions and improve government efficiency and effectiveness, was released Tuesday. And among other things, it details the Federal Emergency Management Agency's multiple problems with disaster response. President Trump has suggested closing down FEMA and transferring its authority over to the states. Trump has also called for federal employees to return to the office. The GAO report notes that telework from home has led to costly, underused buildings. As part of the reporting from the Daily Signal, the GAO Controller General Gene Dodaro testified today before the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee.
Today, I want to focus on a couple of things. One, we're adding one new area this year, and that's improving the delivery of disaster assistance. Storms are becoming more frequent and intense. In the last 10 years, the federal government's appropriated $500 billion for disaster assistance. FEMA is stretched way too thin. They're managing right now over 600 disasters. Some of them go back 20 years. The system is fragmented. There are over 30 different federal agencies involved in delivering assistance. There's confusion, overlapping regulations. We need reform in that area, and that's why we're highlighting it. There's also opportunities to better manage the cost of the federal government. As has been mentioned by the chair and ranking member, improper payments remains a very intractable problem. The last 6 years, there's been over $150 billion every year in improper payments. That's not even the complete number. There are a number of programs aren't even reporting. There's $600 billion net tax gap between the amount the taxes owed and taxes collected by the IRS. Voluntary compliance is hovering around 82, 85%. We can do better in that area to make sure the government's getting its fair share of revenue. There are many major acquisitions across the government, including DoD weapon systems. They're on the high list. The Department of Energy contracting for nuclear development and cleanup of our weapons complex. These contracts are consistently overrun, over budget, and delays occur and don't deliver on the promises. Information technology remains a government-wide problem. It's designated a government-wide list, acquisitions and operations. The government spends over $100 billion a year. Most of that goes to maintain existing legacy systems and not to new technology. So the government's not harnessing the power. FAA's, just to give a couple examples, FAA has 138 air traffic control systems. 31% of those systems are not sustainable by FAA's own amounts. There's not enough spare parts. There's not enough money. There's not enough plans. And their plans to develop many of these systems aren't intended to resolve the problem for 10 or 13 years. We've got the VA electronic healthcare system. They're on their fourth try. They've spent over $12 billion already. We've only deployed the system to 4 medical centers, another 5 in the next year, but there's 160 more to go. So these are issues.
Gene Dodaro is the Government Accountability Office Controller General, testifying today before the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. Again, to the Daily Signal article about today's report, the GAO published a high-risk list at the start of each new Congress to update lawmakers on the 38 areas that present a financial risk of loss of at least $1 billion to taxpayers. The 321-page report says that this year, 10 of the 38 high-risk areas were improved. However, 3 regressed, and the remaining agencies had mixed results. Wall Street today, the Dow up 159, NASDAQ down 260, S&P down 28. Washington today continues in a moment.
Democracy. It isn't just an idea, it's a process shaped by leaders elected to the highest offices and entrusted to a select few with guarding its basic principles. It's where debates unfold, decisions are made, and the nation's course is charted. Democracy in real time. This is your government at work. This is C-SPAN, giving you your democracy unfiltered.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app and wherever you get your podcasts. CBS News reports that Elon Musk told federal workers Monday evening that they had another chance to justify their work or lose their jobs. The original deadline for them to comply passed later on Monday. Employees at multiple federal agencies had been told to disregard his initial directive. Musk, the world's richest person, a close advisor to President Trump and his biggest campaign donor, had originally given federal government employees until the end of Monday to send an email explaining their work achievements. His new directive represents the latest challenge from Musk to government workers as the White House's newly created Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, which he heads, works towards reducing federal staffing and spending. Musk said Monday evening on X, which he owns, subject to the discretion of the president, they will be given another chance. Failure to respond a second time will result in termination. He did not provide a new deadline. That was from CBS News. Alina Habba, counselor to President Trump, spoke to reporters today about this in the White House driveway.
Can you clarify for federal workers who might be confused who to listen to, since Elon Musk's post is different from what OPM sent out?
I don't think it's, look, here's the reality of the situation. There's one person we're supposed to be listening to, that's President Trump, and what the American people mandated, which is what we're doing. People need to be accountable. You need to be able to answer the question. If you couldn't answer it yesterday, you have till today. But the reality is accountability is real. I can't not show up to work every day. I have to answer to the president. And by answering to the president, I answer to the American people. It's very simple. Would you want to pay somebody to do a job and they don't show up to work? I don't think so. I could name 5 things, 5 bullets, in about 5 minutes of me coming into the office every day. If you struggle to do that for a week, there's no excuse for that. Now, you can have an extra day to answer it, but you better be able to answer it.
What clarification can you offer workers, though, who are confused?
I'm not sure why you're confused or why it's so hard to answer what 5 things you've done in the past week.
And what do you say to departments that have told their employees you don't have to answer?
Well, I think that there's reasoning behind that. You have to understand some of these departments, obviously, we work with top secret information that perhaps you're not supposed to disclose. There's a lot of complications that I'm not going to get into, but there's no question that every single cabinet member, every single person that was put into this administration wants the American people working, wants people back to work, wants to stop the Zoom calls, and wants to stop people from double dipping and having 2 jobs when taxpayer dollars are paying for you to come to work.
Is the White House investigating any of the DOGE resistance, like the hacking of the HUD TV?
That's a question for DOGE and DOJ.
Are White House staffers included in the ask by Elon Musk? Did you turn in 5 things to President Trump that you did?
I received an email. President Trump knows what I do every single day. So for me to answer that email is incredibly easy. Frankly, the American people see what I do every single day. So it's just such a non-issue. Think about the fact that we're having look at all of you standing here asking me why people are upset to answer to their boss, the American people, and the President of the United States, what you've done at work. What a ridiculous thing. I mean, it's as ridiculous as us having to say that boys can't play in women's sports. The fact that we are wasting American taxpayer dollars to even have to correct this is insane.
Alina Habba, counselor to the president, speaking to reporters in the White House driveway. It's a story from NBC News. Responses to the Elon Musk-directed email to government employees of what work they had accomplished in the last week are expected to be fed into an artificial intelligence system to determine whether those jobs are necessary, according to 3 sources with knowledge of the system. The letting go of federal workers came up today during a Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee hearing, with the witnesses Dan Bishop nominated to be Deputy Director of the Office of Management and Budget, or White House Budget Director, and Troy Edgar nominated to be Deputy Homeland Security Secretary. The questions are from Senator Andy Kim, Democrat of New Jersey.
You believe that the firings that have happened and the layoffs that have happened, you said that they are not indiscriminate?
Yes, Senator Kim, I don't believe that President Trump or the people at PPO or the folks who are around or in the White House policy-making operation would proceed in a way that is indiscriminate with respect to.
So in terms of the fire, I mean, we're seeing firing based off of status of being probationary, both in terms of new hires as well as probationary also includes those that have been recently promoted, and they are new in that position because they've been promoted into that. And we've seen mass layoffs of that status because, frankly, I guess it's easier to be able to fire them. You don't consider that to be indiscriminate?
Senator, I do not. The folks who are advising the president have made points about believing that the federal employee workforce is not at the right size. It needs to be right size.
So when we were seeing the National Nuclear Security Administration, we're seeing hundreds fired there, later to be reinstated. I mean, did that not seem like that was indiscriminate initially? And then they realized, hey, look, that actually probably the nuclear functions of the United States is important. You know, I mean, we're seeing just the level in which this is happening. Do you think that was an appropriate move to initially fire them?
I think the president has spoken directly to that, or spokespeople for the president have, that in the course of making changes, you may find that you need to then move in the other direction to make an adjustment after you've made the first change. In my view, Senator, that doesn't make it indiscriminate.
Mr. Edgar, I guess I'd love to turn to you and just get a sense, what was the reasoning for the firing of 130 employees at the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency?
Yeah, as a senior advisor, I wasn't responsible for that. But I guess what I would say, just as a response, is if you look at this outside of federal government, the process that you're talking about whether we're being indiscriminate or not, I mean, this is something that all Fortune 500 companies do. To me, this does not seem out of the norm. And you would normally go to reflect on more junior people, especially if you had to make a head cut reduction and you needed to be able to go through a process to be able to get to that. So to me, this seemed totally logical.
Well, I guess what I'm just trying to think that we have incredibly important procedures going forward. So for instance, the Cyber Safety Review Board under DHS was revoked. The membership there revoked.
Yeah.
You think that was a good idea?
I do. I think it was a great idea.
You think it was a great idea, even though that is the board that is overseeing the investigation on Salt Typhoon? Explain
like
that.
I said, I didn't make the decision to do it, but I think it was a great idea. I think that CISA has overstepped its boundaries and authorities. I think it needs to be reeled in, and it starts with that steering committee. I think they need to be reconstituted.
So who is conducting the investigation on Salt Typhoon right now at DHS?
CISA.
CISA's doing it. So they've taken over the review of the Cyber Safety Review Board?
Well, at this point, that review board will be reconstituted at the right time, but as an organization, it continues with its priorities set.
Well, if it's going to be reconstituted, why was it decommissioned to start with? Well, at least why were the members taken off?
Like I said, I thought it was decommissioned because that it was going in the wrong direction. It starts with the leadership there.
Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee hearing today. Questions from Senator Andy Kim, Democrat of New Jersey, and the witnesses, Dan Bishop, OMB Deputy Director nominee. He's a former Republican congressman from North Carolina who lost a race in 2024 for the state's Attorney General position, and Troy Edgar, Homeland Security Deputy Secretary nominee. He's a former Homeland Security Chief Financial Officer. Story from The Independent. Donald Trump's administration doesn't know or won't say, even in a courtroom when confronted by a judge, who is running the so-called U.S. Doge service, which Elon Musk and his team of engineers are using to wreak havoc across federal agencies. During a hearing in Washington, D.C. on Doge's access to Department of Treasury records on Monday, government lawyers couldn't answer whether an administrator for the agency even exists. Last week, a judge in a separate case noted that Doge is trying to escape the obligations that accompany agencyhood, including being subject to the Freedom of Information Act, the Privacy Act, and the Administrative Procedures Act, while reaping only its benefits. That was from the article from The Independent. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was asked about this today at her news conference.
A federal judge yesterday was saying that they didn't know who the Doge administrator was and was asking the lawyer for the administration who it was, and the lawyer responded, "I don't know the answer to that. Can you tell us who the administrator of Doge is?"
Again, I've been asked and answered this question. Elon Musk is overseeing Doge. No, Elon Musk is a special government employee, which I've also been asked and have answered that question as well. There are career officials at Doge. There are political appointees at Doge. I'm not going to reveal the name of that individual from this podium. I'm happy to follow up and provide that to you. But we've been incredibly transparent about the way that Doge is working.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt at a news conference, and many news organizations later reporting the White House told them that the interim administrator at the Department of Government Efficiency is Amy Gleason. She is a former official of the U.S. Digital Service, which the Trump administration rebranded into Doge via an executive order. And a story from AP, more than 20 civil service employees resigned Tuesday from billionaire Trump advisor Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, saying they were refusing to use their technical expertise to dismantle critical public services. Also, when asked, the White House press secretary said that Elon Musk will be attending President Trump's first cabinet meeting on Wednesday. Story from Politico. Fresh off a legal victory allowing it to ban the Associated Press from White House events. The Trump White House announced on Tuesday that the administration, not an independent group of journalists, will determine which outlets have access to the president as part of a pool allowed into the Oval Office, aboard Air Force One, and into otherwise closed meetings and events. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt announced the changes in the briefing room on Tuesday, asserting that the White House Correspondents Association should no longer have a monopoly on organizing pools, and that the White House would determine the makeup of the pool on a day-to-day basis. That was from the Politico article. Here's the question to the press secretary.
In the ruling by Judge McFadden yesterday, who dismissed the lawsuit that AP brought against yourself and your team members here, President Trump, in there he said, why not just do away with the entire White House Correspondents Association along with it, because essentially they have no authority, they just usurped it. What is your reaction to that?
Well, first of all, John, it's great to see you. And you are one of those individuals who has you're on a streaming platform that hundreds of thousands of people tune into every day. So it's great to see you in the briefing room. I did address that actually in my opening remarks by announcing that the White House press team in this administration will determine who gets to enjoy the very privileged and limited access in spaces such as Air Force One and the Oval Office. There are, as you know, look at this room, hundreds of journalists who show up to this building every single day and are not granted that luxury of flying on Air Force One and asking the President of the United States questions. And so we want to ensure, again, everyone has a seat at that highly coveted table. But alas, the legacy media outlets who have been doing this for quite some time and have invested resources into covering the White House, their spots will remain, just like they have in this briefing room as well.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt at today's news conference in the White House briefing room. Eugene Daniels, White House Correspondents Association president, with a statement that begins, "This move tears at the independence of a free press in the United States. It suggests the government will choose the journalists who cover the president. In a free country, leaders must not be able to choose their own press corps." President Donald Trump later asked about this during an event in the Oval Office.
Carolyn Leavitt, your press secretary, sent an earthquake through that briefing room earlier today announcing that the WHCA would not have any control over placing media in the seats in the briefing room. Just want to get your thoughts on that. And also on Air Force One, it's trending on X. People are talking about it. Get your thoughts.
Well, we're going to be now calling those shots. As you know, we won that lawsuit right there. See the Gulf of America, which is a beautiful name. Most people agree. I don't know. It's, AP has been terrible. Look, I think they're radical left. I think they're third-rate reporters. I know the specific young lady that works on the account is terrible. She's a radical left lunatic, as far as I'm concerned. They don't treat us fairly. That's number one. And number two, they had no right to do that. This is the Gulf of America. And if you look at that shoreline, look at that shoreline. Look, from Florida, well, most of it it's called America. And vast majority, like big numbers. So I'm just admiring it as I look at it. I'm getting teary-eyed, but I don't want you to say Trump broke down and started crying. No, how beautiful is that? Look at the shoreline. Look at that. That's America.
President Donald Trump with reporters in the White House Oval Office. From Reuters, President Trump said on Tuesday he wants to begin selling gold cards for $5 million to foreigners who want to move to the U.S. and create jobs. Trump said the immigration program, which he said was legal, could start in about 2 weeks. He added it is possible Russian oligarchs could qualify for the gold cards. That was from Reuters. This begins with the Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick.
EB-5 program was really, you lend some money, but it was full of nonsense, make-believe, and fraud, and it was a way to get a green card that was low-priced. So the president said, rather than having this sort of ridiculous EB-5 program, we're going to end the EB-5 program. We're going to replace it with the Trump Gold Card, which is really a green card gold, so they'll be able to pay $5 million to the U.S. government. They'll have to go through vetting, of course. We're going to make sure they're wonderful, world-class global citizens. They can come to America. The president can give them a green card, and they can invest in America, and we can use that money to reduce our deficit Why do we give out lotteries of green cards? Why do we give out EB-5 for green cards? The President of the United States understands that the right answer is, why don't we eliminate the deficit of the United States of America instead?
The gold card, well, millions, but the gold card will bring in with it people that create jobs, very high-level people. I think companies will pay to get people in. For instance, you today graduate from the Wharton School of Finance or Harvard or Stanford or any college, and nobody knows if you can even go to work for a company. So Apple and all these companies that want to get people to be working for them will be able to buy a card, and for the people that are number one in their class at top schools, I see that as one of the things. But generally speaking, it'll be people with money and people that create jobs, and they won't have to pay any tax on income outside of the United States, which they're not paying right now. They're not citizens, but they'll have to pay if they create jobs in the United States. They'll pay full taxes like everybody else. So you're getting big taxpayers, big job producers, and we'll be able to sell maybe 1 million of these cards, maybe more than that. And if you add up the numbers, they're pretty good. As an example, 1 million cards would be worth $5 trillion. $5 trillion.
Wow.
And if you sell 10 million of the cards, that's a total of $50 trillion. Well, we have 35 trillion in debt. That'd be nice. So we'll see. But it could be great. Maybe it will be fantastic. We have it all worked out from the legal standpoint. It's totally legal to do. Hasn't been done before. It's been done in many different forms. We give them away. Why should we give them away? We shouldn't give them away.
President Donald Trump in the White House Oval Office. From Ohio Capitol Journal, Vivek Ramaswamy officially launched his campaign for governor of Ohio on Monday, saying America is back and it feels fantastic. Ramaswamy, a former 2024 presidential primary candidate and briefly co-head of the Department of Government Efficiency, joins a Republican primary that also includes Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost. On the Democratic side, former Ohio Department of Health Director Dr. Amy Acton is running. That was from the Ohio Capitol Journal. Here's Vivek Ramaswamy at the company CTL Aerospace in Cincinnati Monday night.
President Trump is reviving our conviction in America. We require a leader here at home who will revive our conviction in Ohio. And that is why today I am honored to announce that I am running to be the next governor of a great state at the heart of the greatest nation known to mankind, the state where I was born and raised, the state where Apurva and I raise our 2 sons today, a state whose best days are still ahead. I am honored to announce my candidacy to serve as the next governor of the state of Ohio. I will lead Ohio to be the top state in the country to start and grow a new business. I will lead Ohio to be the top state in the country to raise a young family. I'll lead Ohio to be the top state in the country where our kids get a world-class education in math, reading, writing, critical thinking, and physical education. I will lead Ohio to be the top state in the country where we give our kids the toolkit to think of themselves not as victims but as victors in a competitive global economy. We will lead Ohio to be the top state in the country where we embrace capitalism and meritocracy instead of apologizing for it. We will lead Ohio to be the top state in the country that takes a hatchet to red tape, overregulation, and bureaucracy. We will lead Ohio to be the top state in the country where we lead the way in the sectors of the future, from semiconductors to aerospace. Look at where we are today. How about this company, guys? Love this, in the heart of Butler County, an aerospace company leading us to the future, all the way to AI and the other sectors of our future. I will lead Ohio to be the top state in the country where patriots across America actually flock to instead of Florida and Texas. I will lead Ohio to be the state of excellence in America.
Vivek Ramaswamy in Cincinnati Monday night announcing he is running for governor of Ohio in the Republican primary. President Donald Trump posting on Truth Social, Vivek Ramaswamy is running for governor of the great state of Ohio. I know him well, competed against him, and he is something special. He's young, strong, and smart. Vivek is also a very good person who truly loves our country. He will be a great governor of Ohio who will never let you down and has my complete and total endorsement. Story from the Washington Post. Clint Hill, the Secret Service agent who dove onto President John F. Kennedy's uncovered limousine in Dallas in a heroic attempt to shield him from the fatal gunshots Lee Harvey Oswald fired from a sixth-floor window of the Texas School Book Depository, died February 21st at his home in Belvedere, California. He was 93. C-SPAN interviewed Clint Hill in 2010.
You know, in the book, there's a lot about what happened to you, that you went through depression and you started drinking and all that. Would you tell that story, and when was that? And, you know, here you are. What are you both 78?
78, yes, sir.
What happened?
Well, as I progressed in the service, I got desk jobs, and I was not as active as I had been. And I began to think about the assassination. What happened? What could I have done? And it just started to eat at me. By 1975, when I was retired, it really had gotten to me. Then I was interviewed by 60 Minutes' Mike Wallace. And after that interview, it just seemed to deteriorate, and I hid myself in my basement with a bottle and a carton of cigarettes for years. And it wasn't until 1982 that a friend of mine who was a doctor told me, it's either quit what you're doing or die. And so I quit drinking, I quit smoking, thank God, and I just got progressively better ever since that time.
What impact did it have on your married life and your family?
Well, my kids had suffered a great deal because of the fact I was gone almost 80% of the time during the time I was in the Secret Service. So they grew up almost without a father. But we are very close today. But my wife was very supportive throughout that time and kept on just hanging in there with me.
Clint Hill in 2010 on C-SPAN's Q&A program, along with Gerald Blaine, another former Secret Service agent who was protecting President Kennedy the day he was shot and killed. Clint Hill has died at the age of 93. You can find the full discussion with them, our Q&A program, at our video library at cspan.org. And a statement from the U.S. Secret Service on the passing of Clint Hill reads, the service is deeply saddened by the passing of former Assistant Director of Protective Operations Clint Hill. His unwavering dedication and exceptional service not only to the Kennedy family during a particularly difficult time, but also to Presidents Eisenhower, Johnson, Nixon, and Ford, demonstrated a profound commitment to duty and care. Clint's career exemplified the highest ideals of public service. We mourn the loss of a respected colleague and a dear friend whose contributions to the agency and the nation will forever be remembered. That from the U.S. Secret Service. Thanks for listening to Washington Today. Sign up for C-SPAN's evening newsletter word for word and get the stories making headlines in Washington emailed to you every day. Subscribe at cspan.org/connect. Have a good night.